Well, by my clock here it says 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Here, what we're going to be talking about here today is we're going to be talking about person-centered service plans and something that is going to be a big focus coming up, which is the home and community-based services programs here. Our presenter today is Trudy Grable with the Parents Helping Parents program in the Santa Clara Valley area. And maybe Trudy in a minute can tell us a little bit more about what they serve, but they're, and you correct me if I'm wrong, they're a family resource center here. And once again, if you could explain that a little bit, but I will tell you one thing here with family resource centers and specifically with Parents Helping Parents. They provide an incredible amount of resources here, and as I teach classes on this all the time to professionals and families, and if you're trying to find what the resources are in your communities, you definitely want to find your family resource center in your community, because they basically, part of what these programs do is that they work with primarily young families, but usually they're not limited to that here, helping folks kind of wade through the whole disability community, and they will tend to know all the disability programs in their community. So as far as really getting a handle on what kind of services are in your community, family resource centers are really the place to go. Parents Helping Parents has been around for a long time. And one thing about Parents Helping Parents, and this is whether you're in their catchment area or not, is they have an incredible database of programs that would take you hours and hours and hours to go through. So that's something very special about Parents Helping Parents. So Trudy, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And maybe you could tell us just a little bit about what is Parents Helping Parents here, and why would folks care about it?
Great. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Well, Parents Helping Parents has been around for 41 years. I've been here 26 of those 41 years and working on my 27th year now. I'm expecting to hit 30. And I started here as a young parent who had a child with special needs. So what I was looking for was the ability to speak with other families. And when I found PHP, I felt like I had found my tribe. I had people that I could call who understand the challenges that I was facing. They knew about resources. In those days, people did not come knocking on your door to say, hey, there's a regional center and there's services through early intervention and there's CCS. So I learned about all those programs from Parents Helping Parents, and I'm going to call it PHP from here on out. And I came to PHP. I joined a support group. I was so impressed with what PHP did for families that I decided to join the team here, and I haven't left. Parents Helping Parents is a parent service center. It's like a one-stop shop for families who are facing children's health challenges, developmental challenges, transition issues, IEP issues, assistive technology needs, and we encompass here at PHP all of those. So we have education specialists who are well-versed on special education rules and regulations and are able to share what parents' rights are and what parents' rights aren't, so that when a parent goes to an IEP, they go in there knowing their stuff, and they can feel confident after attending an IEP training or working with one of our specialists here that they can make reasonable requests and ask for the education from which that child would benefit. Because we all want the best, but they don't have to provide the best. They just have to provide appropriate. Same with regional center services. So we help families identify which system provides what service and where to go for that. And we do that throughout a child's lifetime. So they can be 5, 15, or 50, and we're serving those families. We have a lot of senior citizens that come to us now. I'm almost one of those. And they come in and they're looking for supports and services for their 50-year-old child. And so we have families that come in with a 5-day-old or a prenatal diagnosis. So PHP is really out there to help improve the quality of life for the child by educating the parent about what services and supports they might be able to access, including public benefits, private services, and parent support, as well as parent matching for a similar condition or a similar issue. So that's just the PHP overview. Our services are comprehensive, and at the end of this you'll see our website and the link, and I encourage you to go check it out and see all that PHP has to offer. We are not disability specific, and you don't need a diagnosis to call us. So let's get into the final rule, which is really what's driving all the attention toward person-centered plans. And it is being required by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they use the unfortunate name of the final rule, but it does require a person-centered plan for everyone that's receiving Medicaid services through the home and community-based services. So what that means is if your son or daughter has a waiver or your client has a waiver, and some of those funds come through Medicaid through the HCBS waiver, you are compelled to require, or you are required to have a service plan that is person-centered. Every state is going to have to comply. It was 2019, but they've pushed it out to 2022 to give people additional time to prepare for this. And let me just get my thing. There we go. So the HCBS final rule applies to residential and non-residential settings, including what we often call group homes. And so we need to look at those who are living in supported living, independent living, and what we often call group homes, but they are referred to as residential settings. Also day programs and other day type of services, so they will have to also have a person-centered plan. And then employment options and work plans. And I'm just going to mention that Michael Small, who developed a lot of the materials that I am going to be sharing with you today as part of the learning community, is doing an employment-focused person-centered planning webinar. So I will send that information to Stephen and he can get that out to you. It does not apply to nursing homes, hospitals, or ICFs. Anybody who has intense medical needs and is in what we call an ICF for IID, individuals with disabilities that are intellectual in nature. And it also does not apply to mental health disease-related institutions. That doesn't mean you can't use them there, because they're free and they can make a big difference in people's lives. So why am I doing this? Well, I've been, as I mentioned earlier, with PHP for 26 years, and I've always been a great believer that the person should be driving their lives in a positive way. So I got involved with the learning community about 10 years ago after hearing Michael Small at a conference. Since then, I've become a certified person-centered thinking trainer through the learning community. I also have been providing supported living services for 10 years, and I founded a project called the BFF Project, which brings together people who have like interests but also happen to have a support need. And I'm a parent of a daughter who has incredibly benefited by person-centered approaches, and my mother, who is now in skilled nursing, benefits from those person-centered approaches. And while they're not required, we've certainly infused a lot of that into what they're doing where she lives. So Parents Helping Parents does PCT, person-centered thinking training, which is really the core of person-centered planning. Until you begin to think in a way that is person-centered, you're not going to be able to plan in that fashion. So I liken person-centered thinking to the butterfly effect. And if you don't know what the butterfly effect is, it is the thought that if you move one grain of sand on a beach, it affects the whole of the beach. And it was a philosopher, Nietzsche, in the 1800s that defined this effect. And I liken the thinking process changes to person-centered to the butterfly effect, because once you change your thinking, you'll change your behavior, and you will change how you deliver services or how you expect those services to be delivered for your child. So it requires us to think in a person-centered way and then put that thinking into practices. So this is a model of service life to community life. And if you look at the far left circle, it says service life. And that's where a lot of our programs have been, and some still are, where important for the person is addressed. So they're clean and they're fed and they're medicated and they have all the things that they need to be safe and healthy. But there's no effort to address what's important to the person. And so that is where a service life is. There's important for, but not important to. So there's no effort to identify those or address those things that are important to the person. A good paid life is where you have important to and important for both being delivered to the person, and they're being supported in that way. But most of the people are either paid or family members, and they have very little connections outside of those paid family or family members. And where we really want to move toward is we want to move people toward a community life, which is the driving force behind person-centered planning. So that important to and important for are present. There's an active circle of support that is providing the services and the natural supports that people should have in their life, like you and I do. And they are included in their community. So our hope is that we see a movement toward community life, because, you know, for 10 people to get a really great life, but there's 1,000 people in a program that don't have a good life, it's not what we're searching for. We're looking for everyone to have a good life and better days on a regular basis. Just so you know that the average is right in the center of a good paid life. So this is where we see people in the center, where they've got important to and important for, and, you know, but most people are paid or family members. And so we want to move that trajectory toward the end of that arrow. There's several different types of plans that people can have. So you might have heard of maps and paths, and they're very graphically oriented plans with a lot of detail that will be filled into each section. And you can see the top one on the right has a lot of information that people have gathered as a group. The second one is the map, and that is where it's still graphic, but it has things organized in a different fashion. There's also an empathy map that you can use. There's many different approaches that are being used now that are all valid. The one that I use and the learning community has used is the essential lifestyle planning. And that is a very well done, comprehensive, but more text-based piece of information that's going to be provided. And it doesn't assume that there's a circle of support. Some of the others assume that there's already a circle of support to help implement that. So that's kind of just a quick overview of the different kinds of plans that are available that can be used in a person-centered way. So we want to make sure that the person is at the center of all the processes, not just at the meetings. And so it might command some creativity. It might command other people who know the person well if they don't use words to communicate. Family members and friends are full partners in this process. And it also reflects the capacities of what's important for the person or to the person right now and in the future. And it looks toward a valued community life. You build a shared commitment to action that upholds that person's right to a person-centered life, to getting what's important to them while balancing what's important for them. And it's an ongoing process. It's a continuing reassessment of what the person wants at the time that you're doing the review, what is required to learn, and the action that's really going to support that life for the person that takes into account their needs and their preferences. Those are the 5 keys to a person-centered plan. And because we only have a short period of time, I'm not going to be able to elaborate. One of the things that I'm doing is creating just exposure for you about person-centered planning. What is it all about? There's exposure, then there's learning competence and using these approaches, and then there's immersion where you just begin to think and plan and look at things in a person-centered way when you're providing supports to someone. So what I'm providing today is just a quick exposure to what the process is and overview of person-centered planning. In the learning community, we teach 12 different skills at the training, and they include management skills that are used, and I'll go over these a little bit more in depth later. Everyday learning skills. So we're going to learn on a daily basis what's happening with someone. What did we learn from what we did with that person? And then there's discovery and listening skills, where we're going to dig deep and we're going to figure out, instead of looking at the symptoms of behavior and try to figure out how to fix the behavior, we're going to try to figure out the problem causing the behavior or the distress that someone feels. So it is a really methodical and usable way to record information that's really going to give that person a better life instead of better paper. All of these topics are going to go into the person-centered description, and the 3 that you're looking at on the left are learning logs, working and not working, 4+1. Those are everyday learning skills that we're going to be recording, we're going to use to problem solve, and we're going to put that into the plan because the plan is a living document. And the nice thing about doing everyday learning skills is that when you are ready to update the plan, the work's been done. It's been done on an ongoing basis. So we're looking at really what's important for someone. We're not going to forget about that. It is related to health and safety. And so if it's only what's important for someone, let's imagine it's you, and your job is to get up every morning, feed the kids, get yourself ready, go to work, come home, make dinner, feed the kids, and then you tidy up the house and you go to sleep. And you get up the next day and you do it again. That's addressing what's important for people in your life and yourself. But it's not considering what's important to you. So important to you is looking at what makes that person happy, and a number of other factors that we'll get into. But it can't be all about important too. This is often the parent's worst nightmare, where you're going, oh my gosh, there's going to be no, no balance, no discipline. It's all choice and no responsibility. We're not seeking that for people through person-centered planning. We are looking at the balance between those two. So oftentimes, to get what's important for someone, you have to find out what's important to them and bring in a component of both in that effort. The core concepts of person-centered thinking are important to and important for the person, and striking the balance of those two. So these are the areas in which we are able to identify what's important to people. And if the person doesn't use words, we're going to pay attention to their behavior, their responses to different situations or different approaches. So if they light up when somebody walks into the room with balloons, we'll know that that makes them happy. Maybe they become ill, and we need to know what comforts them when they're ill or grieving. So all of that is recorded so supporters would know what is important to that person and going to bring brighter days for them. These are also part of how we look at what's important to people. Status and control. Maybe you know somebody who has a desire that wants to be a police officer, and they have a developmental disability, and you know that that's very unlikely for them. Why don't we find out what is it about the police officer that they see that lights them up? Perhaps it's just the uniform and not the job. Perhaps it's the badge. And what kind of parts of that can we give them in their life today? Could they get a volunteer gig at the police station? So that's just an example of how we can bring what's important for people or to people into their lives. Relationships, things to do, places to go, having rituals and routines maintained. We all have our own routines, but we don't often think about the folks that we're supporting who have routines that are often shifted when they go to a new program. So how can we help folks along that way? And how can we help systems to understand what works better for this person? And I can't reiterate enough that it's very important to pay attention to behavior. So not just what people are saying with their words. If you live with another person, I'm guessing there's been an instance where you have known what that person is feeling without any words. So when words are and behavior are in conflict, we want to pay attention to the behavior. A lot of the folks that we support have been conditioned to respond in a certain way, basically to get you to stop talking to them and telling them what to do. But will they do it is the question. So the behavior is what we want to pay attention to. So let's recap. Important for is safety and health. We're looking at the environment being safe, their well-being physically and emotionally, and that they're free from fear. And in health, we want to look at prevention and treatment of illnesses, including mental health issues, as well as any kind of physical health conditions or developmental disabilities that need attention. We also want to look at the promotion of them being healthy, maintaining exercise in their life, a healthy diet, things like that. So we don't want to forget about wellness as well when we're looking at health. So this is one of the exercises we look at in the training is what have you done to improve your own health and safety? So you'll ask people. So let's say you've got a person who you're concerned about their health, and you ask the group that supports them. What have you tried? What have you learned? What are we pleased about? And what are we concerned about? And you can do this and gather a lot of information in a matter of minutes. Everybody can put Post-its on a wallboard under a header, or you could do a Google worksheet. You can do it any way you want to capture this data. But what's important about this tool is, given your learning about what you tried and what you learned from that, what you're pleased about what you tried, and what you're concerned about still, is what will you do next? You need to have action following most of these tools that we're using to identify things. This is actually a Xerox strategy, a business strategy that was used for problem solving. It should always have a topic. And in the training, we actually do some exercises around this. I'm going to move to the next. We need to look at what people like and admire about the individual. We're often introducing people with paper. And if we introduce them with paper and it's only disability and behavior talk, people are going to make assumptions about who that individual is. So the plan should always begin with what we like and admire about somebody, and not in disability language like good hygiene or, brush his own hair. We want to have it be, what makes you smile about that person? What do you say, wow, look at how hard they work. They're a hard worker. They're a great volunteer. So we want to look at that, critically important for people. And then we look at relationship maps. In the center would be the person. And in that blue circle surrounding the lighter blue circle, we're looking at who is most emotionally connected to that individual. And on the outside ring that's orange, we're looking at who are the other people in that person's life. So from the center, you're going out to emotional connectedness. The hitch about this is people can only appear in one place. So if they're a staff, they're not also a friend. They're a staff. So it gives us a good picture of who is in this person's life and who we should talk to when we're creating their plan. And it should be only who the person wants us to talk to. We want to pay attention to how that person feels about their supporters and how the supporter feels about the person. So if I ask a staff member for, let's say, Susie in the center there, and I say, what do you like about Susie? And they say, well, she's no trouble in the shower. I might try another question, because that's not really what I'm looking for. And they're not used to being asked these questions. So I might further ask, what do you most admire about Susie? And I might hear, well, she makes her own lunch. Still not what I'm looking for. I want to know what she likes and admires, and I want to know if I should pay attention to what she has to say. So I might say, when was the last time you had fun with Susie? And if she says, well, I'm not paid to help Susie have fun, I'm not paid to have fun with Susie, I'm paid to help Susie have fun, then I'm going to say, whoa, that is probably not the person I want to talk to, because there's not joy in spending time with Susie. On the other hand, if I go to the day services and I say, tell me what you like about Susie, and the person says, Susie's the kind of person that when she walks in the room, everyone is delighted to see her and has a great smile and a high five for her. That's the person I'm probably going to want to look to when I'm looking for information about what's important to Susie and how to best support her. So hopefully that gives you a sense about how we would use a relationship map to look at who we should talk to and who we should be listening to when we're creating the plan. This is the actual map of someone. And so after creating this map, we provided it to the client, and she crossed people out. So it is a really incredible way to give you pause when you see something like that, to do more investigation as to why that person was crossed off, and to see if staffing needs to change or if there's a problem with a support person or a volunteer. So this can be an incredibly useful tool when used with the person, especially if they're not able to communicate everyone to you, but you might have to create this and then get their okay on it. Routines and rituals are critically important in looking at person-centered planning. We need to know what birthdays are like for that person. If they're in a residential care home after 30 years of being at home and their birthday was celebrated like a national holiday, we need to know that, because if their birthday comes up and we don't celebrate it like a national holiday, we may well have a very sad or angry person on our hands. And if we just treat the anger and the sadness, we didn't find out that it's really as very simple as getting balloons and decorating the house to have that person have a great day. I mentioned comfort. Comfort when someone is ill. Celebration. Cultural events. What do we know about their culture and what their family has done in the past? What are their spiritual beliefs? And grief and loss. How do they grieve in their household? How do they celebrate life? So all of these things we need to discover about that person and share that information with supporters. And again, this is just reiteration of when someone is sick. Do they need a fluffy blanket? Do they make a nest on the couch and you bring them soup? What is it that works for that person? Because when you're not feeling well, you need that kind of support. And so we need to look at what is it that they're used to receiving and how can we replicate that wherever the person is. Working, not working is a very effective tool in looking at a problem area, looking at it from the person's perspective, from the family's perspective, and from other supporters. And it might just be other supporters and the person, because some people don't have family in our area. From that, you look for common ground. This allows everyone to be heard. And until people are heard, they can't move forward for planning. So it gives us the ability to listen to everyone's point of view. It has to be non-judgmental. It's a place to find common ground, and using that common ground, planning for moving forward. So again, we've got the what needs to happen next to build upon what's working and change what's not working. And so that would also go into the plan. And upon a review, you would look at that again. And you might do this again, or you might use a 4+1 to see how the results came out. This is one of our clients who adds to her own what's working well when we're doing this as a group. So don't forget to include them. This individual really loves to write her own things out, and then it's up to us to decode it. So, but those of us who know her well, we are able to do that. And teams need to work together to solve these issues and come up with solutions that are going to be workable in the environment of the person's home or in the community. So we usually do it by putting big wallpapers on the board, and everybody walks around with a marker, and then we review it as a group and start to look at how do you begin to move toward a more desirable future for that person, taking into account what's important to them and important for them. Matching support is critical. Maybe you've spent time with somebody that flew by. You were there for 50 minutes, but it felt like 5 because you just so enjoyed their connection that you had with them. And then there's those times that you're with somebody for 50 minutes and it feels like 5 hours. And that because it's not a good match. So we want to make sure that when we're bringing people into someone's life, we're looking at what are the skills the person needs, what are the things that we would like to see, what personality characteristics are needed, and what would be nice, what are common interests that they might have. So you wouldn't want to put somebody who might be a couch potato with somebody who runs 50 miles a day. Well, probably no one runs 50 miles a day unless they're doing a marathon, but you know, we want to match people based on commonalities as much as we're able to. And the learning log really helps us look at what happened in an environment, who was there, what did we learn about what worked well, and what did we learn about what didn't work well. And then what do we need to keep doing or do differently? This is not a behavior plan, and it should never be used in that way. This is learning where we are able to identify how to support someone in a way that works for them and to avoid the things that don't work so that we're not creating triggers that then we have to try to symptomatically deal with. In that, we look for what's a good day look like for that person, and then what is a bad day for this person. So if you really wanted to ruin somebody's day, what would that look like? But if you wanted to help them have a great day, what would you do for that? And it helps us understand what really matters to the person, what needs to be in their life, what needs to be out of their life so they can have more good days and fewer bad days. We all have bad days, but how can we improve a bad day when we know it's happening? Ellen, how am I doing for time?
Actually, you've got plenty of time at this point.
Okay, great. All right. I wanted to know if I needed to speed up or slow down. Oh, somebody's webcam came on. Can everybody see that or just me?
I think
so I'm going to move forward.
I'm not sure how I did that. Yep.
There you go. So a communication chart is another discovery skill. So we're looking at when this happens at this time. So we're starting in column 2. So when this happens at this time, we think it means, and we need to do this. This is more communication for supporters, an experience of supporters in sharing what they've learned. So let's say when Rhonda stops her wheelchair, she puts on the brakes when you're pushing her. The when you're pushing her is the time that it happens. What happens is she puts on the brakes. We think it means she doesn't want to go that way, and we need to find out where she wants to go in whatever way she communicates so that others know, because if we're capturing this information, then there's a lot of other people who can come into the service with this person and support them in their preferred way. If we're not capturing this information because you have amazing staff, but they move to Fresno, then you no longer have that learning that has occurred over time and that allows the person to be supported in their preferred way. So getting this documented, getting it into the plan is critical in maintaining a lifestyle that the person wants to live. There's something we call one-page profiles and one-page descriptions. And we provide great detail, very specific information that should be useful. So these are the 3 questions you want to ask yourself if you create a one-page profile by doing some exploration and some discovery about who this person is. And now I'm going to show you what actually goes into a one-page description. So this is one that I created for a client, and on the left it shows what is important to this person. He needs a 30-minute walk to break up work several days in all weather. Got a typo there I need to fix. He needs daily trampoline time. It's important for him to do well in school, and it's important for him to have all kinds of music on his iPod and playing the keyboard. So you can see that there's an entire list, and it's very specific. I'm going to hop down to the 4th paragraph with the list. His morning oatmeal is important to him. Flavorful, pureed foods, especially chili, and having tapioca after dinner, along with seasonal or frozen fruit and ketchup on most foods. That is useful information because if somebody takes him out who supports him, they need to know about what he needs for pureeing his foods so that he doesn't choke. They need to know that after every meal he has tapioca, and that ketchup goes on everything. And that way, when he wants to put ketchup on something that his supporter doesn't typically have ketchup on, they don't go, well, we don't put ketchup on, peanut butter and jelly, but if he wants it on there, what's the harm? And then we're looking on the right column as to what is the best way to support him. Ask him how he's doing today. Allow transition time when activities change. Never rush him. And always project a positive attitude. Oops. And he likes rhyming. So rhyme to me to help me shift. I like to sing when I hear the rain. It's time to sleep when the birdies peep. So the supporters have been given very explicit information to use in a very easy way to look at it. So this might take 5 minutes to scan or read thoroughly, frankly. It's not that much information, so that they're able to provide him with a life that is going to provide for him better days, less stress. And that is the intent of person-centered planning. In the center, and most importantly, it describes who he is. And we list that as what people who know him say about him. He's independent, he's cheerful, big-hearted, he loves learning, great smile, loves to laugh, he's energetic and determined. And so we are painting a picture of this person and introducing them with positive paper instead of disability paper. So this is a great way to start with person-centered approaches. Here's another one. You might notice they look the same because I created both of them. On the left, being able to call mom, having time alone, keeping schedule as planned, all of her belongings. If someone wants to use something, to ask first and honor it if she says no. So that is what's important to her. In the center we have really lovely words about her, and we always include a picture if you prefer. If you prefer not to, that's okay too. And then how to best support that person. So these are examples of what might go in a plan. So the one-page description, there's 3 key pieces of information. What people like and admire, what is most important to them, and how to best support them. And so we're using some of the exercises excuse me, that we teach at the training on building the plan. So for like and admire, we're using appreciation activities where everybody contributes what they like and or admire about the individual. And it is really fun to do that as a group with the person listening, because it may be the first time that some of those people have actually stated that to the person. What's most important to the person? We're using tools like good day, bad day, and important rituals and routines. And so we're going to look at how that works for an individual by mapping this out. Remember, we said we're going to ask, what if somebody's having a bad day, how could you just turn that around for them? Those are important things to the person. How to best support them? Using good day, bad day, routines, and instructions for supporters. Very specific, very detailed. When we don't train people, this is how they look. We have an obligation in person-centered approaches to document so that the folks that are being supported, they're not looking like this, and as important, their staff and supporters are not looking like this. Oftentimes when there's staff changeover, the person being supported becomes the trainer, and how frustrating for them to have to train their supports over and over and over, when if you're using person-centered approaches and tools, you have the information at your fingertips to know how to support that person in a preferred way. And we need to know what triggers are. We need to share that so that we can avoid them. So that would go in as well, like don't use the word no. Tell us when the person can do it. So somebody might say, I want to go to Big Lots today. And you might say, well, you know, that's a good idea. We have these plans, but could we put it on the schedule for Friday? What a much nicer way for somebody, instead of saying, no, we can't do that today. We have this planned. So it's really about the approach that you use when there's a question about what's going to happen. You have to be willing to change. If there isn't resistance, there isn't change. We all resist change. Person-centered thinking does not happen through a single discussion or a one-hour webinar. Person-centered thinking happens by learning how that works, by going to a training, and they are being held all over the communities, and people being supported are happier when their supports think in a person-centered way. So you're looking at them as a human being, not an object that needs to be supported. There are a lot of people who have known triggers, and we need to protect them from those, because a lot of folks that are out there receiving services are a small hand grenade just waiting to blow. And you got to ask yourself, are you the one that wants to pull the pin on that? So knowing what the triggers are and knowing alternative ways to respond are critical in supporting people. And this is the last slide, and then we can take some questions, and I know that Stephen has some other information he'll be sharing, but we should really be acting to prevent emotional trauma. And we do that by listening. We do that by discovering. We do that through person-centered planning. And most importantly, we do that through our actions of the delivery of services that are person-centered. So we want to humanize using our own compassion and empathy. We want to look at, is this just a power struggle? Am I just trying to be in control and contain the person? Or can I remove those power struggles and that control and containment so that this person can have a better life and we're working together instead of against one another? Or we have power with instead of power over. You know, there's no simple answers to complex problems. And so we need to look at planning in a very constructive and thought out way. And the person-centered thinking training, which is 2 full days, it's a 12-hour training, really prepares you to shift your thinking and get you on the movement toward adapting some of these tools and skills that you would learn and bringing it into your child's life or your client's life. And so we want to look at designing quality instead of inspecting quality or having to fix things. So I'm open to questions at this point, and let me show you the TLC. The Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices is an international community of people who think in a person-centered way. They work in a person-centered way. They're professionals who come together, share information. Everybody is a volunteer when they're involved with the person-centered community, the learning community. And all of the materials that we create are shared across the world. And the website is there for you to go and look at. They have an annual gathering. There are also gatherings outside of this one in Southern California, Northern California, and every state has their own gathering. And lastly, this is our website at Parents Helping Parents, and we're www.php.com. You might wonder why we're a .com, because we've had our domain name since 1993. That's for 24 years, and they didn't have .org way back then. So you can go to our website, you can read about who we are, how we help, find the support groups that we have, how to get involved, and what Stephen mentioned at the beginning, the resource directory is incredibly valuable when you're looking for resources in your area. We also house events all over, not just PHP events, but a large number of the events that we host are not ours. So if we hear about it, we post it. So if you really want to look and see what's happening in the community, we encourage you to go to our website and or sign up for our newsletter. Bottom right-hand corner, we have a meetup page. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. So we're pretty out there in the social media realm as well. And now I'll stop.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, that was a lot. A couple of things come to mind. Just going back to PHP itself, and we could spend a lot of time on this here, is that even though you're centered in the Silicon Valley, the Santa Clara area, there's an incredible amount of information, especially with the resource directory there. So I would really encourage folks to look at the website and bookmark it. I certainly have it bookmarked, and when I'm looking for services here, that's one of the first places that I go to. So
and
anyway,
let me
that's
just
the pitch for
mention too,
Yes, go ahead.
we are a no wrong door agency. So if you come to us and it's not something that we provide directly, we will find a place for you to begin your quest for information in your local area. So we will never just say, sorry, we don't do that here. Good luck. We're going to say, gosh, we don't provide that, but let me help you find an agency that'll launch you in the right direction in your area.
Now, as you were talking about this, I'll tell you a lot of what came to mind for me is to go back to, for those of you that don't know me, I actually worked in state institutions and actually was brought up part of my life at Hagnew State Hospital as a family member. It used to be that family members spent a lot of time and on occasion lived on the grounds and actually lived deinstitutionalization. And as Ed Roberts, a mentor of mine, used to focus on, is if all we do is move people from large institutions and isolate them in group homes, what have we done? And the answer is we just moved them from large institutions to small institutions, and we really haven't done much at all. So a lot of this is really more focused on the community movement, which is not just physically moving into the community, but is being part of the community, being active in the community. So there's a lot of what you talked about today really, I think, reflects the real thinking of what the community movement is all about, and it really is person-centered, versus in my family's day, it was really more focused on employee-centered. And having, the idea was compassionate employees that would be very compassionate to their wards. Well, this turns this on its head. It's about the person. I think that's pretty fair to say, wouldn't you?
Oh, indeed, indeed.
And not that we don't want to have compassionate workers, but, who is this all about? So, so that was very helpful. And this is a lot of the movement that we're talking about here. Now, I'll mention the folks that are listening here. If you have any questions, you're welcome to post them here on the question box here. But otherwise, once again, this will be posted on the Achieving Independence website, and it will probably go up on a number of other YouTube channels here as well. So,
yeah, one of the things based on what you just shared is, we can use the least public resources because we don't know what's going to happen. So if we can build community resources for people, they're going to have much better lives. And there tends to be the feeling of resource scarcity, but we are not resource rich in how we can deliver services to people. It doesn't cost any money to become person-centered. It just is a shift in our thinking and how we approach things.
And I think the other thing that's kind of timely right now, and we can expect that there's going to be a flurry of activity coming up here, but really in the whole evaluation and the whole delivery service system here, not just in California, but across the country, as there is a national debate going on having to do with how our programs are funded and that kind of thing. And so this is really a good time for us to go back and, take a look at what is this all about. And it's not entirely about Medicaid. It's not entirely about benefits. It's not entirely about specific programs. These are all important things, but like, what is this all about? And maybe just reacquaint ourselves with this. And also, we need to be good advocates, because I think there's a lot of the decision makers that really don't understand the importance of community living and being person-centered. So, once again, I think this is going to be a very important time for all of us, and education is going to be really key, not just for ourselves, but educating those around us, other family members, members of our churches or synagogues or temples, different groups we work with. Why is it that serving people in the community is so important? Is it just a nice thing to do, or is there something deeper than that? So.
Right. And it's a human issue. It's not a disability issue. It's treating people as equals and having equal right to be in the community. I want to share with this the growth and the movement being required by CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicaid Care Services, is that I have trained nearly all of the service coordinators at our local San Andreas Regional Center. I know it's happening at many regional centers out of our immediate area. The East Bay is bringing it on board. Golden Gate, I've trained there as well. And a lot of service providers have sent their staff to these trainings so that they can shift their thinking. But I think what's most profound for me when I'm doing the training is when I have families there. And being a family member myself and seeing the life-changing effect of person-centered thinking approaches is families often say, wow, I never thought about looking at it from my child's perspective. Because they are inundated with information from agencies that are saying, do it this way, do it that way, here's how you fix that behavior, and yet sometimes those conflict with our gut. And so I would invite you to always pay attention to your gut and ask more questions about why the person came up with that approach to maybe decreasing something that isn't working for the family with your child, or isn't working with the classroom, and have they really looked at the cause and found how they can help shift that person, perhaps very easily. That young man's slide that I showed you earlier with his rhyming, I had a contact with his mother about 2 years after I had created his plan, and she said he was really having difficulty at work. He was not cooperative. He didn't want to do the work. He was a little having some nonverbal cues with his behavior that he was really unhappy there. And she looked at the plan again and she said, oh my gosh, let's try rhyming. So they started rhyming with him at work. Gone. Behavior's gone. Started participating in the activities at work without any resistance. So it can be super simple if people know what to do.
Great. So I think with that, we're going to thank you for sharing with us. Once again, this is probably getting repetitive, but the PHP website and the services they provide there are just absolutely outstanding. You should really get to know PHP and also get to know, some of the family resource centers in your community. It's the starting point oftentimes for finding those resources, and part of being a disability advocate is really, it's a constant learning experience of looking for those resources. Here it's kind of like going to a university where you'd never actually graduate. So Trudy, thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you folks do. And one last thing, if folks are interested in the training, how would they find out about that?
They can go to our website. In fact, I'll just show you. Whoops, not there. They can go to php.com. If you go up to How We Help, you'll go right to Person-Centered Thinking and Planning, and the dates are listed in our events calendar, or you can download the summer flyer. We have a training on June 13th and 14th, and we have another one in August. If I click on there, you'll see the training dates. We're doing one in Gilroy, which is just how to create a person-centered description, which you saw pictures of. But for the full training, you click on here, and you've got all the details.
And is there a charge for this? And is this open for families and consumers? Is it for professionals? All of the above?
It's for anyone who wants to come. A lot of times service groups come as a group, and when I do the training for regional centers, it's usually just for the service coordinators. There is a fee. For PHP members, it's $90, and here is the information. You can become a member and save some money, or you can pay a higher non-member price. We also have professional registration, and the good news is that regional center will often fund parents' attendance at this session. So that's how you do it, or you can just call us.
Well, just going one step further now, is this centered mostly for folks in that region, or would this be something useful even for somebody, for instance, in the North Bay area?
Oh yeah, we've had people travel from all over. They come from the East Bay, they've come from Santa Rosa, they come from Santa Cruz, and we do take the training on the road as well. So if an agency wants to have the training, they can work with us on getting that out in their area.
Fantastic. Okay, well with that, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get this posted as quickly as possible here. And for those of you that are watching this, if you go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C/Achieving Independence. You can subscribe to this in future videos here, and this will be posted in the Essentials of Disability Advocacy playlist. Trudy, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much for the work that PHP does.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.